Welcome to the Feel Good Lab podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Gresh. Join me as we bring together the brightest minds in health and wellness, covering topics from sleep and nutrition to exercise and mindfulness. Our goal is to give you actionable advice to optimize your health and ultimately to feel good. All right. Welcome to another episode of the Feel Good Lab podcast, and this one is special. I say that oftentimes, but you know why this is so special, Stef? In the intro that we just played leading up to this, you're going to see a badass ultra endurance athlete running on some mountains, and that is no other than Stefanie Bishop. So we go way back. I'm going to leave it to you to introduce yourself, if you don't mind.
Sure. My name is Stefanie Bishop. I am a multi-sport ultra athlete. I partake in a few different sports. I finally do some pure ultra running now. I'm an adventure racer. So that is a team sport involving orienteering, mountain biking, trail running, bushwhacking, paddling, sometimes ropes courses. I do races anywhere from like 24 hours up to my longest race so far has been 5 days. I also do mountain biking. I'm going to hopefully start racing some mountain biking this summer and I've done ultra obstacle course races.
Love it. And weren't you the world's toughest mudder?
A long time ago, I won the world's toughest mudder in 2016. I've had kind of a bumpy, every time I've done it since then, it's been a rough journey, but I am considering racing it again this year. Just for for fun / competitive. No, I don't know. We'll see.
You're the only person I know that would say they would do that for fun. For people that don't know, it's 24 hours, right?
Yeah, it's a 24-hour Tough Mudder, but unlike a traditional Tough Mudder course where it's more like a 9 or 10 mile, I don't know if they changed the distance, but usually it's like a 9-mile course. This is a 5-mile loop around 20 obstacles, and you do them as many times as possible over 24 hours.
So when you won it, how many times did you do it?
That year I did 17 loops for 85 official miles, but I definitely did more miles because I started to fail penalties in the middle of the night. I don't have like superhero grip strength. And so I just, took a bunch of penalties instead, which I think is common for the majority of athletes. Only a handful of them would actually clear the course.
Interesting. So there's a little more strategy behind it than just going as fast as you can.
For something like that, you don't want to go, flying out of the gate. Yes, they give you a few. So they changed the format a little bit. When I did it, they had 1 hour obstacle free and then obstacles were open. So now they do like a rolling obstacle start where 1 hour is obstacle free and then they only open up like a handful of obstacles here and there every hour. And I think all obstacles are officially open around 7 p.m. So you can actually get a lot more mileage in now, in my opinion. I mean, a lot, maybe like another lap, but that adds up versus, doing all obstacles for, 23 plus hours because you do get a little grace period at the end to finish.
Yeah. I mean, Steph, you are one of the most badass people I know.
Oh, thank you.
And you know what's funny is we did a little project together. In fact, I talked about the intro to our podcast, and you get that incredible drone footage from our friend Brian Nevins, who you've gone off to do some amazing work with, and a video and a short movie that we'll actually link in the podcast. So it came out amazing. But that's kind of one of the projects we did together. So we go, God, this was pre-COVID, right? 4 years ago?
No, this is during COVID.
COVID.
It was 2020.
Yeah,
2020,
you're right.
2021, I went for the FKT, but yes.
That's right. It was peak COVID. So we go up to the Pemi Loop up in New Hampshire. We're going to do like a little hike up. You're going to do some scouting. We're going to get some content. And I'll never forget. So we hike up the top. It's me, Sam, who worked for me at the time, he played college basketball. This guy's an elite athlete, right? I'll never forget. We're cramping at the top of this mountain, and you literally are just getting started and about to run sprints up a portion of the Pemi Loop for some content up until the sunset. And it was just like, it put in perspective, like us in really good shape. We're literally cramping, and you haven't even started your workout yet up there.
Yeah, well, it's like we're training for different things. A basketball player is a very different type of like power athlete and even an endurance athlete because they do run a lot during a game versus somebody like me who I tend to focus on stuff that's much longer. I have asthma, I have COPD, so it also takes my lungs a little bit longer, my respiratory system a little bit longer to warm up. But I always liken myself to like a vintage car, meaning like as in the winter especially. So you like turn it on in the driveway, you get it like the engine roaring, and you let it sit. You let it sit for a little bit, and then you start driving it, and you drive it like nice and slow at the beginning until you feel the car's like completely warmed up. But once the car is on, you just have to leave it on. You don't want to shut it off. So that's why I think, that's partially why I'm drawn to the ultra stuff. I'm really drawn to it, obviously, for the views, for the nature and all of that.
Oh man, I'll never ever forget that morning when we went up and watched the sunrise. Holy cow.
Off Liberty. That was absolutely stunning. There was I think it was like a cloud inversion coming up through the valley, and the light was just kind of just glowing the whole sky. It was beautiful.
Yeah, really special stuff. So we're going to do something cool on today's episode. We're going to go through your food inflammation test results. You haven't even seen them yet, so that'll be fun.
I'm nervous.
I know. And so we're going to get right into it because I know you're excited to dive in because you take this stuff very seriously, as you have to. When you're doing stuff like running 24 hours straight and 80-something miles and doing obstacles, every little piece of the puzzle matters, right? So you actually have a very unique diet. So why don't you share a little bit about how you look at your nutrition, but also what's kind of unique about it for your perspective as an ultra endurance athlete?
So I've been doing endurance stuff since 2005. I started in triathlon, and I moved into my first ultra event in 2010. And I have now been vegan for just over 6 years. And that was more of an ethical reason for me. But I started to notice that I was also receiving health benefits. As I was like, oh, that's great.
Like what?
I wasn't having stomach issues during multi-day events anymore. I just felt better overall. And like realistically, my diet, other than I would say, I never really ate meat anyway. I ate mostly like fish, and I did have dairy because I love ice cream, but there are obviously now a lot of really good vegan options. But I just feel better. It's just so much better for me. Now, obviously, there's a lot of questions. Where do you get your protein from? That's the biggest one I get. But I think do you have an iron deficiency? That's another big one I get. But in fact, actually, my blood has never looked better since going vegan. I don't really take many supplements anymore, actually. My iron was too high the year after I went vegan, and my doctor is like, if you're taking any iron supplement, you need to stop taking it. You're getting enough iron in your regular diet. So that was refreshing to hear. But diet is everything. And when you're dealing with something that is of an ultra length, even for 6 hours, like given your body, I think, is working more intensely for a shorter duration than for something like a 5-day long race. But if your stomach goes, it's really hard to get back on it. Like everything else just starts to fail on you.
I could only imagine.
And you really have to dig yourself out of a hole. It's not easy. But now I don't really see those problems anymore.
That's great. And so one of the things that we believe in is everyone's unique. And it's not paleo versus keto versus vegan versus carnivore. What works for you? And it's great that, what your conscience was telling you to do also is working for your body, because sometimes those do not overlap.
That is true.
And I got to tell you, we're going to share your results in a second. We did our top test, the 176. We look at 176 foods, and we also look at your gut barrier, which would contribute to leaky gut. I'm not just saying this, Steph. You have the healthiest results we've ever seen.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
So excited. And I was so nervous. I ate my oatmeal this morning. And
now, don't get me wrong. There's some things in there, and I hope that you do eat and consume some of these foods, because it doesn't mean you can never have them again. You're going to cut them out for a period of time. We're going to see if you feel even better. If you don't, and we reintroduce them and no symptoms pop up, then great. Continue eating them. But we do have a couple foods in here that I think we're going to be able to focus on. And so we'll get right into it. But I think it's really important for our listeners is, just because you've gone vegan, and again, if you want to do it for the conscience reasons, then all for it. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that that's the right diet for everybody, right? Your unique body is adapting to it and adapting. And also, it's kind of what makes you such a badass ultra endurance athlete is like you have that adaptability. It's probably a little bit of a genetic piece for you to be able to depend, no matter the environment, whether the food you're eating is X or Y, you seem to be able to thrive in all these crazy environments. So I think that's something that you have going for you genetically. But it was really cool to get the results back and be like, holy cow, out of 176 foods we tested, you had 5 show up as inflammatory.
Oh, wow.
I mean, typically people will have 15, 20. And then on the leaky gut panel, you had nothing, completely negative.
Well, that's
And,
great.
put it in perspective, I had all positive and I kind of knew it. Like my stomach was in shambles. Now it's something I've been able to completely cure was my leaky gut. It wasn't easy. It took a long
But
time.
the
I did my
test
first
helped
test in
you.
2017, but like you don't realize how sick you are until you get healthy.
That's it. And that, I think that's a really important point, is that, we never realize how bad we feel, whether it's from diet or our environment or stress or whatever it may be. I have really bad tension headaches. I'm actually currently going through trying to get treated for them, because I've had them for over 2 years. And
Yeah.
when I started to sleep again, I didn't realize how sleep deprived I was until I started to get sleep again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've been in a cloud for a really long time. So yeah, it's sometimes when you, like, you remove something or you get something that you need, and you get this clarity and you realize, wait a minute, I can feel so much better. And then all of a sudden, see, in my brain, how that works is, oh, what else can I do now? Like, how else can I push myself now?
Yeah.
So
How can
totally.
I get even better? And that's why it's fun to work with you. We've been working with some, college basketball athletes and different athletes at University of Connecticut. And so it's fun to now transition over to this world of optimization. We typically deal with people that are sick and we love the impact we can make. But it's interesting because a lot of people that we can help the most don't necessarily want to hear that it's not just a magic cream or bullet or pill. And it's a societal thing, and there's the pendulum is shifting. But your demographic, you absolutely know that the input and understanding the personalization of what is the right fuel for your body is everything. So
Yes.
when you hear, hopefully when we go through these results, you're going to be like, you know what, this is good. I'm excited to cut this out for a few weeks. So I have
Provided I
my
don't eat
results
it
here.
every day.
I'm going to share my screen, but this is basically what you're going to see. You're going to see the reds, the oranges, and the yellows. And those are the foods we're going to focus on. The red is the most inflammatory, then orange, then yellow. Everything that shows up on this first page is something we want to focus on, but the red can be multiple times more inflammatory than an orange or yellow. So there's definitely a hierarchy there, right?
Okay.
All right, cool.
I'm
So
so
this is my first time
nervous.
sharing my screen on this. So let me see if
I'm a creature of habit, so I definitely eat a lot of the same things every single day. But I'm also willing to, I'm willing to make changes if
all right, can you see this?
I can see this.
Okay. So
Oh,
right away, I'm
I'm
sure you're going to
shocked
the
at that
red.
orange, by the way, of
Isn't
anti-inflammatory.
that unbelievable? You
That is
wouldn't believe. I would
shocking.
say probably 15 to 20% of people we test. I actually had it also. Turmeric, we sell a turmeric product, a curcumin, which is the
Yeah.
curcuminoid in turmeric, which is giving it that anti-inflammatory properties, and we have it in our topical. Now, this test is
Topical's different
measuring it in
though,
your
right?
gut, so it doesn't mean that you can't use our natural pain cream or sport recovery lotion anymore.
I use it
Um,
every day.
but isn't it wild to think that something that's supposed to be anti-inflammatory in some people's bodies can be causing inflammation? And that's the special piece of what we're looking at here. It's unique to your body, right? There's no everybody should take turmeric because it's anti-inflammatory.
Yeah.
Most
That
people it
really
is.
proves the point right there. Yeah, it's definitely not a one size fits all.
So I'm going to run through because some people are listening and not watching. So in the red, we had white potatoes.
That's
In
fine.
the
I don't really eat many white potatoes.
interesting.
So that's
Okay,
easy to
that's
take out, but I do eat something when we get down to the yellow, the
yeah,
other
I can already tell what it is.
potatoes.
I knew what it would be, to be honest with you. I could like picture you eating it. So in the orange, we had turmeric, like we talked about, this amazing natural anti-inflammatory that in your body, and by the way, this doesn't mean forever. This means right now in the snapshot from a week and a half ago when you took the test, based on your environment, your diet, your genetics. So I would say about 70% stays the same. I've done the test 3 times and the core grouping stays the same, but certain things will drop in and out based on your environment and the timing and your gut microbiome. So it doesn't mean it's a forever thing, but based on when you took the test, turmeric was reacting with your blood. And just to be clear, what we're seeing here is it means that your immune system was reacting to these foods as well as what we call complement protein C3D. When they're both present, there's an inflammatory reaction that can be thousands of times more inflammatory than your natural state. That inflammatory reaction is the thing we're really digging into. And that's crazy, right? We have this anti-inflammatory causing an inflammatory reaction. So now in the 2+, we had buckwheat, sweet potatoes. I think that's probably where we're going to talk a lot about, and navy beans, right?
Yeah, I do like ancient grains. So I mean buckwheat though, I don't really eat buckwheat often. But a lot of the ancient grains are really protein packed.
Yeah.
for the, versus something else. So I do eat them, but that's okay. As long as it wasn't quinoa that
I
came
know.
up.
Luckily, it wasn't. And it's like, I'm going to run through this and stop sharing my screen, and then we're going to talk a little bit about
Yeah.
what we found here. So, on the second page, I usually like to have people go to the second page because look at all these foods we tested. And look at how many are in that dark green, no reactivity, and a couple in the mild reactivity, which is not something we need to pay attention to. I mean, Steph, you had so few that maybe you want to look at some of these, but I would not recommend it. The light green means you had a very, very mild reactivity to it, not even something we need to pay attention to. So look at how many of these foods that we tested were not showing up as inflammatory for you.
Now, I do wonder, this is a question, because I haven't had dairy or meat in over 6 years. Do you think that has maybe skewed my test?
100%. Let me save that for a minute from now because
Okay.
I have and this is a theory, but I have a theory of why your test came back so healthy. One piece of it, I can promise you this right here. If you look at the gut barrier panel, right? Negative, negative, negative. I had this entire thing red. Okay. So, and again, I knew it. Like, I think I would have suspected you would have been on the healthier side for this, but there's a chicken or the egg situation happening here. And what it is basically if you have leaky gut like I did, you have undigested food particles getting through that gut membrane. So there can be an inflammatory reaction just from the leaky gut. It's a chicken or the egg. Sometimes the inflammation is causing leaky gut. Sometimes the leaky gut's causing inflammation. Either way, we need to cure the inflammation and the leaky gut. No doubt about it. That's absolutely the focus. But, in my case, gluten and dairy off the charts, I was eating them every day.
Yeah.
I guarantee they were the main contributor to my leaky gut. And then it became this vicious cycle for me, right? So let's get into it for you. Now, you said you eat ancient grains. Do you eat a lot of wheat and bread?
I do like bread, actually. Like, simple, it's easy. I love a vegan butter sandwich after long runs. Just like I call it like a slab of butter sandwich. I just take like whatever, like a Miyoko's butter, and I have a slab of bread, some salt. It's just, I think, like a fat bomb that just tastes so good. I
Yeah.
do eat bread. I would say I eat bread almost every day.
Okay, good. And because the reason I ask that is like the main culprits that we typically see in this test: eggs, dairy, and gluten. Those are the big three. Now, you don't drink dairy. You don't eat, right? You don't have animal products. So,
Other than like an accidental ingestion, in which actually, interestingly enough, is that I can taste it. I know that there's dairy in something. I'm like, wait a minute,
interesting.
there's dairy in this. Like, and your senses become so heightened when you don't have something for so long.
Yeah. So I think, and the reason is, so like eggs, dairy, and gluten, they're in and of themselves, they're not really bad for us. The problem is the way that we manufacture them in the United States. And I talk about this on most of the podcasts I'm on, but just to reiterate it, like here's a big problem with gluten. We've modified our gluten. If you go to Europe, most people can consume gluten and not really have a reaction because they use the ancient grains, the things that our bodies have evolved in order to consume. Literally, it's the same food that our ancestors had thousands of years ago. The new to nature grains that we eat typically in the United States, oftentimes our immune system's like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
And they're treating it not as a healthy food. They're treating it as something that's gotten into our body that they need to go and take care of. And so that immune response, when it's dealing with healthy foods we're eating, now all of a sudden imagine you get sick or you get COVID or you're dealing with an injury where your immune system needs to be focused on that. But it's got this out of control inflammation it's dealing with from healthy foods we're eating. That's the epidemic we're up against and why this test is so important.
Yeah. Well, even eggs, I remember when I studied abroad a very long time ago when I was in college in France, in Nice. And I remember the first egg I cracked open and it was bright orange. It was not this dull
Right?
yellow. And you're like, wait, what? I don't get this. And it tasted like flowers. I still remember it because it was such a different taste from what I was used to in the States. And I also ate croissants every day and bread every day and other pastries every day. And I remember I came back over Thanksgiving and a lot of my friends, they're like, are you okay? You've lost a lot of weight. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm eating more than I've ever, like, I just constantly eat. The food's so delicious. And it was definitely the quality of the food. My body wasn't reacting to it in a negative way.
100%. So with that, I think there was one food. I mean, the turmeric. Do you take turmeric at all?
I used to do the curcumin phytosome like supplement, but I haven't taken that in a while. I do every once in a while. We'll put it on some like savory oats or something
Yep.
like that, but it's not a daily thing, so that's okay. I could actually remove that out.
Yeah. So I know it's the sweet potatoes, isn't it?
It's the sweet potatoes. I
Yeah, and I
love
could
sweet
like
potatoes.
literally picture you with like a quinoa sweet potato bowl, like as I was reading the results earlier this week. So,
They're
you
even
know,
good to wrap up for like long runs. Like you have like a pre-baked sweet potato with some salt and butter, or like olive
no,
oil.
the good news is they're only a 2+ or a 3+ reaction. So they're lower on the hierarchy, but we're going to recommend. So here's the recommended protocol for these results. You're going to cut out all these foods for the next 8 weeks. The goal is, let's just assume they are causing some inflammation in your body. By reducing that inflammatory burden for 8 weeks, there's a really good chance you're going to be able to reintroduce it, and that break from it is just going to recenter stuff. And we don't need to retest. You're going to be the judge, and you're so in tune to your body, probably more in tune than anyone I've ever met, just because of the things you have to put it through. So you're going to reintroduce one food. So say just the sweet potatoes. I know that's going to be the one food you're going to reintroduce first. And that's the only thing you're going to change for a 2-week period. And you're going to pay attention. Maybe keep a little journal. How are you sleeping? How's your stomach feel? How's your migraines, right? There could be an inflammatory component with the migraines potentially with the food. I'm not saying that, anecdotally there is, but maybe. Let's hope. Let's hope you don't have a single migraine over the next 8 weeks and it's sweet potato. I guarantee you'd rather not have migraines and not eat sweet potato, right?
Oh, 100%.
Exactly.
Oh, that's so. But when I reintroduce it, what type of quantity are we talking? Like to like one day on? Talking about this like a return to run program, like 1 day on, 2 days
Yeah,
off.
it's funny because I give this advice. I go through these tests all day long, and nobody asks me that. And I like to keep it as simple as possible because the most important thing is people follow it. So I usually end it right there. And the truth is, most people are going to reintroduce it a couple times over the 2-week period. The best way to do it, by far the best way to do it, is you have one full serving of it, and that's it. And that's it. And you pay attention because the inflammation can show up multiple days up to a week later. It's not like an allergic reaction where you swell up and you ate peanuts. The inflammatory reaction can be delayed, is delayed. And so it's hard to be like, man, I don't feel great today, but then 3 days ago I had sweet potatoes. You're never going to correlate that back. So the best way to do it is you have one good, healthy serving of sweet potatoes and you pay attention for the next 2 weeks. It's okay to have it a couple times, but that one, really controlling basically, what we're going to do here is going to allow us to be more specific with analyzing how you're feeling and why.
All right.
Does that make sense?
May 1st. It makes sense. May 1st. I'm just going to have a massive sweet potato.
I bet. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing how you're feeling over the next 8 weeks. You're in great shape. You're out there training and getting ready for some of the stuff you're doing now. So is there symptoms? Obviously, we talked about the migraines. Are there things that you might be paying attention to? Sleep, recovery, injuries, anything that you may want to look at improving over the next 8 weeks and pay close attention to?
Well, yeah, I am recovering from a type 2 navicular stress reaction. So in my foot, it's, for those who don't know what that is, it's an extra, navicular accessory is basically like an extra bone in your foot. I have a larger bone. And an old injury from high school where I have a pretty weak ankle. My left ankle is very like loose. It kind of can like roll and it doesn't hurt. But one too many rolls, I got in my head and I kept on rolling my ankle when I didn't, when it didn't really make sense. And all the torque on that bone caused a stress reaction. And it, unfortunately, it's why I had to drop out of the speed project this year. It just didn't seem like a smart idea to go run 300 miles in about, 3 weeks from now. But I'm just starting to return to run again. So inflammation is very important. Like you said, I'm very in tune with my body. My physical therapist just went on leave for a month. So, but I'm also I don't have him then to ask, 5,000 questions because I'm very also paranoid about my body. When you go through injury, you're saying, well, what is this? Is this the bone? Is this just my soft tissue around it readjusting to the load again? So yes, I have a very heightened awareness right now about especially what's going on within my foot.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit because you've dealt with a lot of injuries. So there's a couple pieces. One is like, again, I keep referring to you as this badass, but let me be clear what I mean. First of all, the things you're putting your body through are unbelievable. But pretty much the whole time I've known you, you've had some injury because again, the level of training and the things that you're doing are not normal. So like you're basically pushing your body to the absolute limit. When you do that, there are repercussions that you then have to deal with. And you keep doing it again and again and again. And you are constantly dealing with injuries. So a lot of people that listen to our podcast and we support here at the Feel Good Lab, they're thinking about like running 80 miles in 24 hours and doing 1,000 obstacles, and like they're laughing. They're like, wow, that's amazing. But like, how's this going to help me? Well, the reality is you're a normal person. You're not, I mean, you're special. Don't get me wrong. But
no, we're all normal. But like I've grown, like worked into this over many years. And, you know, my 100 miler might be somebody's 5K. And that's how I talk to people about it, because they're like, you're superhuman. And I'm like, no, I have just been doing this for a really long time. And it's what I like to do, you know, to each their own. Same thing like with the diet. You know, everybody is different. We all have different levels of, you know, physical abilities, and just my, like, again, like my crazy challenge may be somebody's 5K. And for somebody that may be the most daunting thing ever. And those are the people I really applaud, because it's not easy to start something new and to push your body and to get uncomfortable in that way.
absolutely. So like, how do you look at injuries? Like say, you know, you're dealing with something now, but like, what's the worst injury you've dealt with over the past few years?
A femoral neck stress fracture.
Wow. And
That's
how long
something
did that have you sidelined for?
that happened in 2017 at World's Toughest Mudder. 7 weeks out from World's Toughest Mudder, I had a little twinge in my hip, and I did throw around stress fracture in my head. I was like, it could be a stress fracture. I was in Colorado training for 2 months, and I couldn't like get back to New York. My doctor was on vacation or leave or whatever, so I couldn't get an MRI. And I'm like, okay, I know what to do. I saw some practitioners in Colorado, but I still couldn't get an MRI because of insurance. And basically I just took 7 weeks off of running. I biked, I did strength training, I rode. I felt okay to start. And within 30 miles, I couldn't walk. I definitely shouldn't have started, shouldn't have started the race at all. And that's my error and my stubbornness. But I really thought that, okay, you know what, like I feel okay running, like let me see what happens. But when I went to the doctor, my old orthopedist, this is not my current orthopedist, I love my current orthopedist, but my previous orthopedist basically told me that I shouldn't be on crutches. They thought on the MRI that it was more of a stress reaction. And I'm not a person who wants to be on crutches, but I begged him to be on crutches. I was in so much pain. And he said, no, I want you to be weight bearing. So 6 weeks later, I went back for another MRI. No change. And this is actually interesting because this lines up from when I went vegan. He said, well, let's go run your blood work. My blood work was ran on January 2nd. And I went vegan January 1st, just for 30 days at that time. But little did I know that would be it. And I saw my vitamin D was low. So obviously it's calcium absorption plays into factor. I think my iron was not great. I would actually have to dig up those results. It would be interesting to see. But he thought it was a nutritional issue. When in fact, it was actually just, I have this, like, my pelvis likes to turn to the right. So when it was turning, I didn't notice it. And over time, certain muscles then work more than others. And just being in that position for too long, too much stress, my bone developed a stress fracture. But it took me, I started running again. So that was the beginning of November, I stopped. I started running again in March 31st, April 1st, and a little bit. And it was very scary.
And this is 2018.
2018, yes.
And you remember the exact date.
Yes, because I videotaped it. I even remember in February, I slipped outside the orthopedist office on ice and I fell on the hip. And they instantly sent me for x-rays. They thought I refractured my hip. Oh. I mean, it was just one of these things. I felt like I betrayed my own body because I started a race I shouldn't have started. I felt like my medical team kind of betrayed me because I was misdiagnosed. And then 6 weeks later, he said, well, you definitely had a stress fracture. You should have been on crutches. Like, so you're saying I lost 6 weeks of recovery time, or I slowed down my recovery as a result. And it was just like one thing after another. I actually was not in a good state and in a good mental state. I was getting very depressed. I felt like, what's next? Is anything next in the athletic world? Will I actually be able to fully recover from this? Because everything, just one thing after another. But when I started to run again, I was like, okay, like this is going to be hard, but we're going to do it. And, slowly and surely, I just, put one foot in front of the other and got back to it. I had a good PT. I have a great PT now, but I had also a great PT back then who really helped me get back on my feet, and rebuild the strength. And,
You mentioned something back there, like you weren't in a good mental place. So obviously you're a physical specimen, like elite athlete, but from the outside looking in, I'm more impressed with the mental piece. And even with some of the stuff you're doing, like, what's your perspective on that? What percentage you think is mental and what percentage is physical?
I always say, I call it like the triad, like when you're doing endurance or anything physical. And this is why I encourage anybody and everybody, no matter what level of fitness you're at, you could be couch to a 10-minute walk. If that's your challenge, that's your challenge, because it's not so much physical. It's way more mental and emotional. Because when you're putting your body through that type of stress, you're not only like fighting things up in here, but you might be fighting feelings that have nothing to do with what you're doing physically. But whatever it is emotionally, you'd be surprised at the things that come to the surface when you're pushing yourself, really hard physically.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I never even added that third component to it. And so when you're training, you're doing a lot of physical training. Do you do stuff to help with your mental health and and that side of things?
Like, I mean, I don't really I find like moving meditation, like in the woods, it's not necessarily like training. Sometimes I just go for like a walk. And I always say I have ADHD. I'm diagnosed. I've had ADHD my whole life. I wasn't diagnosed actually until my 20s, which I wish I was diagnosed earlier. I think I would have achieved a lot more at a younger age, but you can't look back on that. I definitely think it helps me in some ways, but in other ways, it definitely hurts me. I hyperfixate on things. It's really hard for my brain to just either I'm thinking about 5,000 things at once, or I'm hyperfixated on one little thing, and everything else around me is falling apart as a result. But I always I think of like my life, I'm like in a music video. My brain reacts to music. I studied music when I was younger. I played the flute, played piano a little bit. And it like churns up emotion, and whether it's even like the sounds of nature and just being out in nature and like hearing animals or just listening to the wind. It's very therapeutic, and that doesn't really happen in those crazy hard workouts. Though it's when you achieve a state of flow, they call it, it feels like you're outside of your body. It's very strange. Your body's like working really hard, but you're not present in the pain. You're just like, you're there. You're just present there in the environment. But I do like to just go out. Like I'll go out for a walk this afternoon, and just, it like resets me. I think like getting actually professional help if you're dealing with things, that's great. I've totally done that. And I still do it for my ADHD, because people like glamorize ADHD. I do think that that's kind of like as somebody who's like dealt with it, and it's a lot more frustrating than it is like not. And I think that like people glamorize it nowadays.
When you say glamorize, what do you mean?
Like, I mean, not glamorizing this, maybe that's the wrong word, but it's like, I don't want to like say that not everybody has it, but I don't think that people who have it, I think that people don't understand the actual struggles of having it.
I got you. Because I always say that I've never been diagnosed, but everything you said, it completely resonates with me. However, I bet you I'm not even close on the spectrum as somebody who is diagnosed like yourself. But I always say, I'm like, you know what? I like to say that I struggle with ADD. To your point, I probably don't. Now, you don't necessarily know. Maybe I do, right? The point isn't that. But the point is that almost everybody kind of, first of all, everybody is on some level of spectrum from a focus perspective, no doubt. And I do think there's a nutritional aspect of that. And it's a big part of what my dad works on in the pharmacy.
Oh, yeah. Right? I'm addicted to sugar. Because my brain wants dopamine. It's like, where can I get it from? And partially why I like these crazy things is it's definitely the dopamine I'm getting fed from all the different like extreme adventures and the death-defying mountains and all this stuff. Like, 100%. It's like my brain is like, let's go. You might be terrified, but let's go.
But then you find peace in it. So like one of the things, and we have this actually posted on our website, it's the little like 1-minute clip that Brian Nevins did of you talking about nature. Meanwhile, you're running crazy miles on the top of this mountain, but you're reflecting back on like this peaceful, you're in a peaceful state when meanwhile your body's in fight or flight mode. Yeah. That's very unique to be able to disconnect that.
Well, it just happens. Like flow just happens. And I remember I don't remember the first time it happened, but I always remember people would speak about it. And I didn't recognize that even growing up, I would sometimes find myself in this state of flow. And I think it was 2 summers ago, maybe, I was like in a deep state of flow. And I remember I couldn't feel anything from my waist down. Like my legs were just like, like a locomotive, like just like churning and churning, but I didn't feel it. I was just there. I was just like a part of it. And I like, it's definitely the environment. I think like that's where something like the ADHD is great. I think it's like, I can also distract myself from the suffering. In a way I'm like, oh, wow, look, squirrel, and sometimes I'm like, oh, look, squirrel. And I'm like on the ground again because I trip over a root,
Yeah.
and I'm not paying attention.
Yeah.
So it definitely works. In some ways it's really good. In other ways it's not, because things like injuries, I hyperfixate on an injury.
Right. Yeah.
And then
Point,
that can turn up stress and inflammation.
100%. Yeah. And you're bringing up a great point. It's one thing you struggle with. It's also one thing that makes you. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it is what it is, right? Based on your genetics, your environment, it is who you are. And let's be clear, like, you're doing amazing things, and you're not just doing them athletically. Like, you're an amazing person doing amazing things in other ways that we've seen, here working with you at the Feel Good Lab. So I'd love to kind of end on this note. Our podcast is all about giving people, normal people, and I'm going to call you not normal for a second. No offense. Normal people the ability to really improve their health and wellness. And so what are some actionable tips or advice that you might have for people, even like myself, that are just looking to get a little bit better throughout the day?
The first thing and foremost, and I always have to remind myself of this, is you have to focus on your micro wins, not on the macro picture. Biggest thing. Because the macro picture can be very overwhelming. You feel like you're not getting anywhere, when in fact, something little every day adds up very quickly. In terms of like actual like health stuff, I think, it's people like, oh, I have trouble getting up. If I want to get up early in the morning, or, I say keep a liter of water next to your bed. The second your alarm goes off, chug it. Or if you get up to go to the bathroom an hour before your alarm goes off, chug it. You will not be able to lay in bed much longer because of that. And then guess what? You're front loading your water a little bit. You put a little sprinkle of salt in it. But I'm
going to take that advice.
I drink like some people, I say, like, if you don't drink a ton of water, ease in with like 2 cups, like half a liter, but don't have like 16 ounces. I usually do a full liter. It just also like makes me feel better when I'm ready to eat then, that I've already hydrated a lot, because sometimes we mistaken hunger for actually dehydration.
100%.
And that's a lot of especially in the winter months where it's cold, we don't feel as dehydrated, but when in fact, I think most of us are actually quite dehydrated.
Yeah, I would agree. Hydration is the biggest thing that I've been focusing on recently. In fact, I got my water bottle here. Might as well take a sip. But I find that for me, when I'm dehydrated, it's showing up in all these different ways. And oftentimes I'll remember, like, I haven't had water in a couple hours.
Yeah, definitely. What else? Like another thing, this is like just, I'm a big fan of whiteboards, like even like small ones. I just think it's like really, I'm a list person, ADHD. It's like, I like to write lists and have books of lists, but the whiteboard I like because I have a small one and I have a really big one, but the small one I have, that's like facing my bed across the room. So in the morning I can like see like, just like either I have a few big macro goals on there and then I have like a few micro goals on there. So that I can like erase it and rewrite it, but it's always like in my face. It's always there. It's always reminding me to do X, Y, and Z. With nutrition, give yourself some grace. You don't have to go all in like on anything. Like just, make small changes. How you like training, you adapt over small changes, over gradual, over like a short amount of, not short, but like a short or a long amount of time. It's gradual. I think that like jumping from one extreme to the other doesn't usually yield long-term results. And it's a learning curve if you want to try a new diet, like a lifestyle. Some people have told me like, I want to go vegan, but I don't know how. It's going to be so difficult. And I tell them, I'm like, try it 1 day or 2 days a week. Forget about 7 days a week. Just try it 1 day a week. See if it's something for you. And there's going to be a learning curve. And if you cook, you didn't just come out of the womb cooking. You learned. And you learned over probably a long period of time. You just forgot that you learned over a long period of time.
Yeah. No, that's great. I really appreciate it. I mean, Steph, you've been a great friend of the brand, so we appreciate you so much. We love helping you. We love watching you flourish, doing the crazy stuff you're doing, and you're not slowing down. So
I'm just
what's
getting
next for
started.
you? And I know there's certain things that are top secret, but what's next for you in the next year? Like what are you really looking to accomplish?
Well, since I can't do the speed project this year, I'm definitely going to do that next year. I may go, they have one in the Atacama Desert last year in November. And if that one is happening this year and I get the invite, I will probably go do that. Just because that's a really unique race. It's though, just so people who are listening, the Speed Project is an unsanctioned race from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. It's about anywhere from like 290 to 340 miles, depending on what route you decide to take. So there's like no official route, no rules, no spectators. The only rules are don't do anything illegal, obviously, or putting yourself in danger. And they just did a test run in the Atacama Desert last year, and I couldn't go to it. But my PT said no. This is why you need good practitioners to keep you in check. But I would love to do that again. World's Toughest Mudder is I'm like 55% yes. I'll be there no matter what, but I think it would be fun to do it one more time. It's going to be in Florida, so it will be warm, which I like. I have do some adventure races in the fall. I would like to go for the Pemi Loop FKT finally. I think a few years ago when I was training for the New Hampshire 48 for the 48 4,000 footers, I was in plenty good shape that I could have gotten it, and I didn't. And I'm kicking myself for not going up there and just running it as a training run. So, with all the big mountain training I'll be starting to do soon, I think I'll be primed to go for that. I mean, that is one of my favorite loops in the world. And I just really want that FKT.
And for those people that don't know, FKT is fastest known time.
Correct. Yes. They were around for a very long time, but during COVID, it blew up in the running world and even in the cycling world. And everybody started to do them because there were really no races around to do.
Right.
So they've become a huge thing. There's a website for them. You can look them up by region. I mean, there's some FKTs that are, only like a mile or I think like a couple miles long. And there are some that are hundreds of miles long. So it varies. There's something for everybody.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if any of that stuff's for me. That stuff is wild. I'll stick to playing golf and basketball.
Well, I'm horrendous at golf. I can play golf. I'm not good. And basketball, I'm really bad at as well.
Well, we know you found your niche. And Steph, thanks so much for coming on. Last thing is, where can people find you?
You can find me either on Instagram, Stefanie Bishop. It's Stefanie Bishop. A lot of people spell it with the PH. And I also have a website, which I'm updating. I'm in the process of editing some media stuff for it now. And that's just my name, StephanieBishop.com. But I'm definitely more active on, I would say Instagram mostly because what I do is a lot more visual, and I just it's a visual platform. So.
And you'll notice the main image on your website is exactly that awesome image that we talked about from Brian Nevins when we did that little project together on the Pemi Loop. So thank you, Steph, so much. Always a pleasure. Cannot wait to check in with you in 8 weeks and before that and see how amazing you feel without the sweet potatoes.
I'm excited. Thank you so much, Ryan.
All right, Steph.